Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to Job Search Radio. And it's the first show of 2016. Excuse the noisemakers being absent, but I didn't think you wanted to hear them. On this show, I thought I would talk with one of my recruiting counterparts about some of the things that we see ahead for 2016. So listen to this show. It's going to give you some great ideas about career planning, about job search, and some of the trends that we see. So I hope we're going to have a lot more shows with one another. Let's listen to music or sing along.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
So my guest on this show is Jason Leverant, who's president and COO of At Work and president of the Tennessee Staffing Association. Jason, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on.
What's going on, Jeff? I appreciate you inviting me to join.
You're very welcome. Now, one thing I know is with little boys and little girls grow up, the first thought that they don't have is, Mommy, Daddy, I want to grow up to be a headhunter. How did you wind up getting into this field?
A very similar situation. Actually, I was in the process of looking for a job. I was in a position where I'd left a role in national marketing for a manufacturing firm, and I was struggling finding a similar position. Went and talked with some folks in the contingent labor industry, and they said, you know what, your background would be a perfect fit for doing what we do. And so I thought about it, talked to my wife a bit. Quite a significant change, but fell into it, jumped right in, learned as much as I could about the industry, and here I am today. So it's kind of exciting to use the services of an agency, and then on the flip side, get swindled into the industry through a nice sales pitch.
Swindled? Come on.
Yeah. But it's been phenomenal. You know, what really attracted me to the industry more than anything is the ability to make an impact in people's lives. In our job seekers and the folks that we partner with, and help find really fulfilling employment. We can make an impact in their lives to a huge positive degree, and that's really just a great feeling that you can get. And it helps that the industry as a whole has just continued to gain momentum in regards to partnerships with firms and people seeing value both from our client side, but more importantly, our job seekers and the candidates that we work with, seeing the value in what we're really doing and bringing to the table for them. So.
That is super. I feel much the same way about how I got into the field, other than the swindled part.
It was a good swindling, though. I felt good at the end of it.
So here we are, the beginning of 2016. I have a noisemaker, but I'll spare you. And we're going to talk about what you see ahead for the new year. I've got my opinions. You're my guest. I'm here to listen to yours. So what do you see going ahead in 2016?
Gazing into my crystal ball, that's one of those things, it's hard. You never know what can happen in the economy, but really, when I think about it and I think about where we've come from and the direction the industry, not only the industry, but really the economy in the U.S. has turned and is really moving to the positive, I think we're going to continue to see a significant positive growth in the U.S. economy, a significant increase in, quote unquote, the skills gap, the demand for great quality employees will continue to increase across the board and in various fields. I know I can speak specifically to what we do, but really, honestly, I think it's going to be a great market for job seekers throughout 2016 and beyond. Looking into the different industry types and where we have, really great exposure in different areas, specifically in those, positions in the manufacturing, in call center, in IT, in those areas. The demand is just phenomenal. And then within that specific positions in those industries, we see greater demand than less. But it's really exciting to be a part of it and being at the bleeding edge, if you will, of the economy in the type of firm that we are. We typically see ramp up before the rest of the economy, as a contingent labor and temporary staffing provider, as a headhunting service, we see the front lines of increased demand for people, for candidates, with our client partners. And we can see and work with them closely. If we're doing our job, we're working with those customers, those businesses in all of our local markets to really help them with those forward-thinking hires and identifying the top candidates in the market. So far, I continue to see positive trending. We have not seen a slowdown whatsoever in our markets. We've actually grown phenomenally. It's really been exciting to be a part of it, and also scary. It's quite a wild ride when you grow so quickly, and the headhunting market and that side of the world is growing so fast. It's unbelievable. So I again continue to see positive momentum, and definitely with that positive momentum is going to come opportunities. And that's really
it's interesting you talked about manufacturing, because when I look at the government reporting for some years now, manufacturing jobs don't really seem like they've been growing all that much, if at all.
Good point. And that's what's interesting, and I mentioned it just in passing. It's specific positions in that industry, and that's where we see folks, and I see job seekers coming through school, and I want to try to stop and tell them, listen, there's certain, manufacturing can write it off as a whole, that entry-level kind of manufacturing. It may have stagnated, it may have slowed down a bit, but those specialty career types, those specialty positions, metalworking and machining first, come to mind very quickly. Those positions, if people are looking at different career types to pursue and go after where they can see opportunity almost immediately out of school with very limited experience, that's where they need to go. Very, very specialized. It's very hard because many people don't think about that when they're going to school, vocational school, or even college to pursue careers in that field. Many times these folks are leaving their education and jumping into roles making more money than somebody with a traditional degree from a university. So it is specific job titles, and it also is regional as well too. We've seen in the regions that we're finding a lot of the demand and need for, but typically that just comes to mind very quickly. Also, we see the influx on the manufacturing space of more integrations of technology. In that space, also, kind of a hybrid worker, if you will, somebody who's operating, heavy industrial or manufacturing equipment. It's turning into almost an IT operational role because you've got to be able to identify, different problems or situations with the machine that you're working on. Many times the interfaces are very complex, so it's becoming this like amalgamation of IT/manufacturing put together. And everybody really is embracing it. Technology, people are in love with technology, and that love is just increasing and merging and kind of crossing platforms, and it's really exciting to see that because that's one of the things I see into 2016 from a job seeker demand perspective. IT is continuing to really lead the charge in technology for where people need to look and go if they want to get hired quickly. So.
And I think with IT, there are a couple of factors, just like there are really in manufacturing, that come into play for why there are shortages and why the demand is so great right now. And I think the simplest place to point to is the impact of the last recession. If firms aren't planting seeds in the ground for a couple of years like they didn't do for 2008, 2009, and a good part of 2010, and they suddenly come back and say, hey, we're trying to hire a 5 to 7 year person. Okay, where do we find these people?
Exactly. They didn't exist. They may have moved on to different industry types or whatever the case may be. So, looking at shifting, almost working with our customers to shift the mindset and from the standpoint of targeted recruiting, what realistically is available in, from the standpoint of candidate pool or talent availability in the marketplace. Do those people still exist or have they moved on? And if they're if it's that difficult of a career to or a candidate to find, are they able to increase incentive base compensation to accommodate, to attract those passive job seekers? Those job seekers are currently in roles that they're not actively looking to leave, but would leave when the right opportunity presented itself. So.
Are you finding that people are keeping their heads down generally and not looking, or do you think supply is starting to pick up? And folks, by that I mean more job hunters out there looking again.
We don't see a marked increase in those job seekers. We've shifted our positioning on our strategic recruiting plans towards those passive job seekers, those that aren't actively looking but are positioning from the standpoint of their trending and habits online, that we can see that they would potentially consider roles, a new role or a career change. using different tools that may be available. It's interesting to note, and again, people love technology. I personally haven't utilized this service, but I just became aware of a recent service that actually studies the search history or search trending for certain employee types. And you can point this tool at certain employee types, and it will actually actuarially and statistically analyze the search history and tell the probability of a person's likelihood of changing careers in the next, it's like 1 to 5 years or whatever the case may be, effectively gauging these passive candidates, these people that are not actively looking for roles, to identify their likelihood to change. So, hey, if you're not a job seeker today, you may be one in the future, and these analytics are telling employers these kind of information. Sounds like it's science fiction or things in the future, but it's actually been proven, and it's actually a product that really exists out there. But it's exciting to see that. And so, honestly, when people look at what they're doing right now, their online activities specifically, I see a really 500-pound gorilla in the room is LinkedIn from that standpoint. That is effectively a resume that floats out in the world, whether you're a job seeker or not. So what does that presence look like? And many people neglect to keep their LinkedIn profiles really updated and polished. But it's something that at any point in time, that is you from a professional biography online. And many times people come across that very quickly. That, to me, is one of those areas that many people, if they're not managing or maintaining properly, it can hurt them. It doesn't just hurt them whether they're again, a passive job seeker. They're not actively looking for a job. It doesn't mean they need to keep they don't need to keep their shoes polished, if you will. You want to have your best foot forward at all times, to open those doors for future opportunities that, hey, if somebody presented with you a position that would increase your salary by 30%, would offer you a lot more flexibility, would offer you a lot of the benefits that you're looking for, and nobody would turn that down. Usually nobody would turn that down. So you want that opportunity to possibly land in your lap. So you've got to keep that profile. You've got to keep your active statuses on these different tools that are out there.
And folks, I'm going to pause here just because there's, when people reflexively respond to contacts by recruiters to them, I'm happy where I am right now. Let me ask you a question, folks. If someone offered you 25% more or 10,000 more than what you're making now, a shorter commute, more opportunities to learn, a boss that is as nice to you as you are now, why wouldn't you be happier? It's not that you're unhappy where you are, but, frankly, folks, the person who gets ahead isn't the smartest. They don't always work the hardest, although those are great qualities to have. People get ahead by being alert to opportunity. Most of the time, that's going to be external to your firm. Occasionally, it's internal. So, don't respond reflexively with the "I'm happy" when you get the phone call. Just listen for a second. Put your left forefinger across your mouth like a bit. Chew on it firmly. Don't respond yet. Just listen.
And Jeff, to your point too, it doesn't hurt to ask questions as well too. Ask a question. Ask that question of, why is this position open? Hey, at the same point in time, you can gain a lot of understanding about that position and the mindset of what they may be looking for. If you start to hear bits and pieces of what that you like to hear, those positives, you can start asking questions that will help build rapport with that recruiter or that decision maker, and also gauge in your mind what they're really looking for, and you can adapt accordingly when it comes to further along the process, really what they're looking for in that role. But that's a great point.
Thank you. And we're going to be back with more from Jason in just a moment, but first my job search insider tip for this show. Now, this is a sensitive topic for me because I'm going to sound like a scold, but I've got to scold some of you, and that is about spamming resumes. Today I have been assaulted by one inappropriate resume after another. And it's not just about, as I was telling Jason before we started recording, the intern who's applying for the position, heading up safety, environmental engineering, and hazardous materials for a firm. Help me understand how an intern is qualified for that. But the nature of spamming resumes in general. I know it is easy to send out a resume these days, but be considerate of people on the other side. After all, so many spam their resume, flipping it across the transom like it's a burger at a fast food restaurant. Come on, there's another one, there's another one, there's another. And all you're doing is wasting your own time and everyone else's. If you're not sure whether your background fits, take a moment. Take a look at the qualifications. Remember that word, qualifications, for the job. If you don't fit them, don't send your resume. It's really that simple. Now, excuse me for sounding like a scold, but this time I thought it was appropriate. And I've got a lot more advice at my website, which you can visit at thebiggamehunter.us. Go to the blog. There's a ton of information there that you can watch, listen to, or read to help you find work more quickly. Now let's pick up with Jason where we left off and talk about 2016. So we've been talking about recruiters reaching out to people and keeping their profiles up to date. What else should people be doing? Actually, let me backtrack before I go down that road. What else do you see for 2016 in your crystal ball, seer of all things employment?
Really, as I mentioned earlier, and we didn't go down this path as much, as the economy continues to improve, as there's a continued demand for skilled individuals, for talent in certain roles, and quote unquote the skills gap increases in size. It's, as job seekers, it's our job to be aware of that and where those may be and where demand might be. And so looking at that too, there's certain, in my opinion, roles and areas where there's going to be higher demand than others, and it kind of dovetails into my suggestion I've been thinking about, and as we led up to this interview in regards to that aspect of building your network, if you will, and everybody, and I fall prey to it as well. Everyone thinks about the online aspect and the very, cold, hard internet only approach towards marketing and networking. But I want to encourage everybody in 2016 to not forget about building a network locally as well in your own local marketplace. And that's not just attending chamber events and things of that sort. That does help tremendously. But many times in the career path that you may choose, in the area that you're specifically working in, there's groups of individuals that may meet on a regular basis, that may get together to talk about challenges facing your individual or unique industries or whatever the case may be. I would highly, highly encourage you to get involved on a local level. The more involved you are, the more active you are in that local community, the more likely you are to be considered in the event of somebody looking for a referral. Because as we continue to grow into 2016 and beyond, those referral-based exchanges, really, when somebody's looking for a specific position, they're going to ask for referrals internally first. You want your name to be the one that comes up first. So really the only way to do that is to network with people who are actively in those similar roles. If you're looking for a promotion or whatever the case may be, actively engage people in those roles where you're targeting. On a local level, it takes some digging. Again, you may have to use your search tools online to find that. You can look in Craigslist, CareerBuilder, LinkedIn. Not CareerBuilder so much, but LinkedIn is a great source for that. Craigslist is another good source, as mentioned, but really trying to engage on a local level and build that network locally, because that's going to open up a lot more doors. Many companies, the cheapest way to find talent, to find employees, is to ask for referrals from their existing employee base. So, thinking about that aspect of it, I think that's going to become a great opportunity to open up doors as job seekers and candidates to really build that local network. And this may sound a bit old school, and the reason I'm mentioning it for 2016 is because a lot of people forget about that tried and true method of building that network locally, building relationships, because those relationships can last and can really open some great doors up over the long term.
70% of all positions are filled through networking, and 70% of the 70% are filled as a result of introductions to people that you don't know at the beginning of your search. So, how you start building your network now, because some of you heard me say on this show before, the next recession's coming. I don't know when, but there's going to be another recession at some point. And you don't want to be scrambling then to start reassembling your network. Now is the time to reintroduce yourself to people that you used to work with, get together socially with them. We just finished up the holiday period, which is the ideal time for really doing this, but you can follow up with the new year very easily. Say, hi, how are you? New year. Just thought I would reach out, see how you're doing, and reconnect with them because that's how you build your network.
Well, great point. And just something, Jeff, as you're mentioning that, somebody may stop and say, well, you know what, I'm very specialized. I only produced widgets that fit an XYZ part, and there's not a group in my area that does this. Well, if there's not a group in your area, my recommendation is to start one. Take the initiative and actually create a group. Invite people to coffee, organize an event or activity and invite people in your area. There's where you're going to lean on, LinkedIn and some other areas or avenues to capture that population that you're looking to build, but take that initiative. I saw a recent quote floating around on LinkedIn, and I believe it was on Facebook a bit, from Mark Cuban, and effectively saying that success is really, you receive success if you outwork and outlearn everybody else. And that's really when it comes back to the fact of, if there's not a group in your area to really generate or network with in the specific industry or area or position that you're looking for, create that group. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. There's enough tools available out there that you can organize something very easily at your local Starbucks or call the Chamber of Commerce in your local community, and many times they'll let you have the room space to coordinate an event like that. I think it's a great way to build a network, show initiative, and then you start, whether you're employed or unemployed or whatever your job seeker status is, you become effectively a leader in that space, and that instantly amplifies your credibility, your validity in the marketplace, both from a job seeker perspective, but also professional in the industry that you're in.
One of my early shows on Job Search Radio was an interview with someone who talks about starting a networking group, and you're the hub of it. So you have to, I don't recall the title of it, but it's like episode 3 or 4 that is focused in on how someone starts their own networking group. Because as you said so well, suddenly everything is hubbed around you. You present as the expert. You're the center of attention. It's not a lot of work. Like you said, you get a room somewhere, you meet in the back of a Starbucks, you meet for Sunday breakfast every once in a while and get together with people. However you do it, it's just a great way to build up your perceived expertise, show as the expert, and when firms are hiring, you become the go-to person for them.
Exactly. Great. It's just a side note. We had a great experience with that, from the standpoint of building our resources from a recruiting end, both from a recruiting perspective and a relationship perspective in a local community. We started a small HR focus group for human resource professionals, people entering that field. That was 20-plus years ago, and that group is still running to this day. And we're very active in that group in Rogersville, Tennessee, little town in Upper East Tennessee. But it's a great example of what you can do, from the standpoint of doing it on a budget, on a shoestring. It doesn't cost a lot of money; it just takes time, and it takes diligence on that person's part. So
that is fabulous. Now, I'm noticing that we've been having a great time in our conversation, and I just want to make sure I make room for you to get across what additional points you want to get to. So I'm going to hand the baton to you. What haven't I asked you about yet that we really should cover during this show?
Really looking at 2016 and beyond, I think from a job seeker's perspective, if I was in that role, some of the things I would really just throw points of recommendation out. Do your homework. That's one of the biggest things. There's so many resources available that you should be able to know everything about a company. If you get that opportunity to score an interview, even an early conversation with a recruiter, you can get to know that company. Do your homework, do your research. That positions you to be extremely knowledgeable. It shows that interest level. I know that's again tried and true practice, but I think that speaks ever more so as you're trying to differentiate from other candidates, other job seekers out there. Ask questions. That was mentioned before, but and here's the note on asking questions. And really, you don't want to hijack. And what I mean hijack is you don't want to hijack that interviewer's questions, because there can be positions where folks are interviewing for positions and they start asking question upon question upon question, and they're hijacking or overtaking the interviewers, and usually that's noted as a negative perspective or a negative habit to get into. So that's just something that I made a note of as well too, because as you begin to your journey through interviewing and looking for different positions out there, there's opportunities to try to differentiate yourself. And somebody may think in their mind, I'm going to ask a lot of questions and try to differentiate myself that way. That doesn't always work positively for you. So I want to make sure you put a lot of thought in that. Be very strategic about it. So that was the only 2 notes that we really didn't cover. But again, I'm really looking forward to seeing what 2016 has in store. Again, we don't know if and when that another recession may come, but all our indicators in the industry and space we're sitting in, it's going to be extremely positive. So looking forward to another great year ahead of us.
I would agree with you, by the way. The one proviso I put in is, and this wouldn't happen right away, number one, rate hikes, interest rate hikes, especially for manufacturing, which impacts the cost that they have to spend on carrying goods and materials prior to sales. That one's relatively minor in my thinking. The bigger one is the presidential election, because one thing I know about business is business hates change. And although a lot of people in the private sector are not fond of our current president, they at least know what the rules of the road are. No matter who's elected next time, it's a new president with new ways of how things are done. It's hard for them to plan. Hopefully, there will be a clear decision as we get later in the year, so that business doesn't have to procrastinate as they go into their budget cycles at the end of the year, because otherwise 2017 can become complicated.
Hey, 2015 and 16 have been extremely complicated, and I agree completely with that. I mean, many times through the election year themselves, hopefully we'll see some stability. But 2017, we'll never know what it may bring us. It really depends on who's sitting in the White House or in the Oval Office.
Absolutely true. And folks, did you hear me talk about any particular political candidate? No. Well, I want to be clear. This isn't a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. This is just a change thing. Business hates change. It leaves things unpredictable for them. So be patient as we get later in the year. Notice how things are going. This is an ideal time for you to make change, I must in all candor say, because firms are spending money to hire. They're not throwing $50,000 raises around, but they're clearly offering raises for people to change jobs. And I'm going to give you some simple math. Can most of you afford to forget about a $55,000 of additional income over the course of the next 5 years? What's $55,000 in income? It's a $10,000 raise that you get today over the next 5 years and small incremental salary increases. Most people I know can't forget about $55,000. And if you did something crazy like change jobs a second time after 3 years, lo and behold, that's over $70,000 of additional income. This is a good time. The market is strong for almost all skilled labor in the United States. Unskilled labor, it's different, but for skilled labor, there are great opportunities out there. Take advantage of them. Run your career like a business. Be the CEO of your career, and you will do extremely well right now. Jason, this has been fun.
I've truly enjoyed it. I've truly enjoyed the opportunity to speak, Jeff.
I want to throw in one additional thing. For those of you who are listening, establish a schedule for yourself to log into LinkedIn, because if you're going to take the time to update your profile there, as you should, people won't reach you unless you check in for messages there. So once you've had the profile updated, check in regularly. Just set a schedule every few days to log in. Put it in your phone as a reminder, especially if you're a commuter. There are apps that make it very easy for you to do that. So it's a smart thing to do. Sorry to cut off there. I apologize. How can people find out more about you and the work you and your firm do?
Thanks, Jeff. Two places, really easy to remember. If you want to learn about @work, if you were interested in potentially applying for a position, go to www.atwork.com. That's ATWORK.com, nice and easy. But if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'd be excited. I'd be thrilled to do that. If you want to chat about your job seeking and really any kind of bouncing ideas off of and things of that sort, that's the best way to catch me. If you go search me on LinkedIn, that's Jason Leverant. I believe Jeff will have the information posted online, and I'm pretty easily and accessible there. But definitely looking forward to hearing from everyone.
Super. I'll put your public URL in the show notes to make it easy for everyone. Jason, thank you. And folks, I'll be back next time with someone else to help you with your job search. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, go over to iTunes and or Stitcher, whichever app you listen to the show in. Leave a favorable review for it. It just helps with other people discovering the show and helps with, well, it'll help others with the information I provide. Folks, have a great day. Take care.
For more job search advice, visit Jeff's website at thebiggamehunter.us. That's thebiggamehunter.us.